Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday college football, basketball blitz on Sidelines. A lot to talk about. I think everybody in the sports world is keeping Mike Leach, Mississippi State's football coach. He's a really cool guy, and everybody that I know, is talking about this and keeping him in our prayers and praying for a miracle. I hope it happens. But man, he's in a bad spot right now, and just he's only 61 years old, but I hope somehow a miracle can occur and he can pull through this. So if you believe in prayer, a constancy in prayer, keep it up always, no matter what. Absolutely do it. Sidelines with you here every Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. www.sidelines.live, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, and Kicks 96.3 down in Alexander City, Lake Martin, Alabama. Part of the Radio Alabama group, Lee Perryman and the group in Sylacauga, 11 stations down there. We are a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's what we talk about. It's who we are. Sometimes we even go at each other because of the portal and NIL or whatever. But we talk about sports. We don't preach to people. We don't talk about politics. We talk about sports. We are your respite, your break from all that other crazy stuff. So those of you that are out duck hunting, like MJ and Derek and Eric and all the guys, Cherry over there at 550, hopefully killing some ducks this morning. People everywhere listening, we thank you. We appreciate you. And we're going to get right to it. And tell you one other thing. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. And if you like Mexican food and you're anywhere around Wynne, Arkansas, you got to go up on Falls Boulevard right before you get to Highway 64 across from Red River Ford Toyota, where we're broadcasting, and go to the Crazy Donkey. I went there yesterday with Audrey. Had some of the best Mexican food I've ever had, and Mexican pizzas. Man, God, they're good. I also have a restaurant, a brick and mortar structure in Palestine, Arkansas. But that is the Crazy Donkey, and I'm going down there to the Crazy Tiger. Doug Dean, AU Dose, Jimmy Hodge just checked in from Lake Zurich, Illinois. And Doug, what's the latest news down there? A lot happening. We're all, it's really sad about Mike Leach, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to claim I know, but I mean, everything that you hear and read about him isn't good, but I know they're doing, and I got to believe they're doing everything they can to try to save him. But, my prayers are with him, his family, Mississippi State and SEC. We're all family. We may be rivals. That's because we respect one another at the end of the day. My life doesn't depend on what some 18-year-old kid does. I'm interested, highly interested. But at the end of the day, it's about the relationships we have with people. So Doug Dean, the Eagle, let's go.
Good morning, Rob, Jimmy, Audrey, and everybody in earshot. And I'm glad you led with that warm wishes and prayers for Coach Mike Leach, his family, and the entire Mississippi Hail State family. I'll never forget, Rob, and Jimmy will remember it, I know, and I know you will, Rob. At around the time that, what was it, 2003, that the great Jim Fife passed away, entirely unexpectedly, but I think people knew he had health problems, but it felt very unexpected. And that was a point in time, as if it's ever ceased, that the Auburn-Alabama rivalry had some intensity to it. And I'll never forget, you ask any Auburn person, it was the outpouring of love and sympathy from the Bama Nation. And really, other rivals was unbelievable. And I know that all three of us, and I bet anybody with a heart at all, expresses the same sympathy and prayers and love to the Mississippi State family. And we also must respect that there's scant information coming out, but there's a good reason for that. I'm sure it's what the family and the caregivers prefer right now. So our prayers to Mike Leach. I noticed tipping the hat to Mike and what he's meant to college football, I stumbled across a quote that I just love about Leach. And it says that he sort of in a football sense, but also a little bit of a personality. He reminds you of that high school chemistry teacher you had who was quirky and odd, but he was really good. And like he said, Leach, as a football coach, an offensive mind, it's kind of like watching a turkey fly. It was odd but beautiful. It is odd but beautiful. So I hope that this season that we're in, a miracle is in the offing, and our prayers continue for Coach Leach.
Absolutely. And, and I tell you what, you think about different. And then when, Rod and Paula Bramlett died tragically Memorial Day weekend in 2019, we watched that 30 for 30 documentary, More Than a Voice, about all the great announcers, the radio play-by-play guys in the SEC. And, Eli Gold's talking about being there with Rod Bramlett because he could get there quickly, and the Auburn people hadn't even got there yet. And you think about that. And I know, look, I want to beat you, Alabama. I want to beat my rivals. But, man, a lot of my best friends are Alabama people, some of the best people I've ever known in my life.
Of course.
And, and as you got a daughter, and I got Mallory, Alabama. So that's what makes this special. And Mississippi State, you heard what Lane Kiffin said. I mean, those guys are friends. People, you turn on some of these TV shows and you listen to some of these degenerates get on there and talk about this coach or that coach. And some of the stuff I've heard about Hugh Freeze, all I say to these people is, I bet you were in church Sunday talking about being a good Christian and being so forgiving, and then you turn around and you say that stuff. So you have no credibility with me. Go back in the basement behind your parents' house and continue to do nothing with your life, because that gets me fired up. But, I mean, Mike Leach, he's talking about fun. Jimmy talks about it. We all talk about it. I don't know him, but, man, he makes football fun.
Well, he was the, shall we say, and Spurrier certainly I came to really appreciate Spurrier once I got past the agony of getting our ass whipped by him on a regular basis when he brought a serious aerial attack to the SEC. But Mike Leach, in this era of coach speak and agents that try to control the every word of their coach if they can, ADs do the same, PR handlers, it's just sucked the oxygen out of the air of a post-game presser even being worth tuning into. Nick Saban, treats us to some fiery post-game speeches from time to time. But Mike Leach, if you appreciate authenticity at all, you had to appreciate Mike Leach. He was not guided by political correctness in almost anything he said, but it usually rang of truth, whatever he has to say.
Yeah. And I'm getting some information coming in. I mean, that from Mississippi State, this is coming in. So I don't know. I'd like to get somebody to officially confirm what I'm reading. I'm of the old Reagan and Gorbachev at Reykjavik, Iceland. Trust but verify. But it's just it's a sad situation.
Yeah.
Young man, he's only 61 years old, and made football so much fun. And coming into the SEC, holy cow! Never gonna ever be forgotten. I'm gonna try to confirm something while we're continuing on, Doug. But I just like I said,
hearts are heavy. We'll continue to pray.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pivot a little lighthearted, Rob, because you can do two things at once. You can be praying and feel gloomy, a great man, but you can also continue to enjoy all the minutes and hours and years we have.
That's right.
Fragile life. But I gotta say, and I know I want Jimmy's take on this first out of the gate, but God bless John, I think it's Robert Glenn Baumhauer, number 91 for the Crimson Tide, and that amazing business he's run. And he was a smart enough businessman to realize Auburn money spends too. So there's a Baumhauer's Victory Grill franchise in Auburn. And I was delighted, Rob, to see yesterday that through the On to Victory NIL collective, and really I would give some credit to Arkansas for kind of getting this thing started. But the owner, Kevin Tudhope, of Baumhauer's in Auburn has partnered with On to Victory NIL Collective. And if you are an O lineman, and God knows, I hope they're in the listening audience, we need you at Auburn. You will eat free at Baumhauer's Victory Grill, and in certain months, I'm sure it's the football season when families come, there will be credits or vouchers or whatever given to O lineman family members. So what a smart marketing ploy that is. That it's win-win. That means you want to see some Auburn big uglies that help open holes for running backs and win a game. Go to Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Auburn. Isn't that funny, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Arkansas had a collective when the NIL world officially became active in July 1st of last year. There was a barbecue a chain or establishment that had to deal with all Arkansas, I think, offensive and defensive linemen, to where they could go to that establishment and whenever they felt like it, and eat on the house. So yeah, it's one of those times in college football, which obviously it's changing the landscape, but at the same time, it's also in a way allowing players that are very important to a team's success be recognized and have their contributions appreciated. And, like it or not, in a lot of ways, it can really prevent a poisonous locker room, where you just have a handful of elite players that are getting these NIL deals, whereas, you're going to see more and more of this. And I've said it before, I think you're really going to see that Texas Tech model come into place much more throughout the Power Five college football world. But, it's just like everything else. We just have to go with the flow, see how things develop, and then it all tends to work out as time passes on.
Well said, Rob. We got a minute before break.
Yeah, no. We're good, aren't we, Audrey? Yeah, we got 4 minutes for the break. Right. Mildred's got the stopwatch over there.
There you go. I was, even if you're not someone that pulls for the burnt orange and navy blue, if you will, not that nasty looking orange and blue that the Gators wear. Sorry, buddy.
Oh,
fun shot. I'm sorry, buddy. I love you, man. But I'm not gonna. There's the point in time is going to come where I will quit talking about Brian Harsin. But we haven't, and I think I'm going to give myself maybe a month to finish that postmortem. But my reasoning is some things are so epically bad and such a failure of process, a failure of hiring, a failure of governance, that you should burn it into the brains, the institutional memory of your university that you love, and try at least to not make that same mistake twice in the future. But Harsin, who's, he's had his success. I don't want to take away from him successes as a player and coach at Boise in particular, a couple other stops. He'll, his legacy at the moment would have to be offensive coordinator in that unbelievable Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. But he was, his dad, as you know, is into drag racing, and Harsin is too. And he had a famous saying that I think is going to live in infamy when you compare it to what Hugh Freeze out of the gate very early is doing. Harsin liked to say, quoting his dad, to a customer that wanted an engine repair or build or something, he'd say, you can have it fast or you can have it good, something like that. You can't have it both. And so it seemed to me Harsin was making a religion, a football religion, out of being slow at everything. And Hugh Freeze comes in, dare I say, and the guy probably couldn't be averaging 3 hours of sleep a night at this point. He understands the urgency. And last weekend, great visits from players. Some of these kids really liked Auburn all along, but they couldn't hitch their wagon to Brian Harsin, and we know now why. Just he doesn't connect with people. And, a recruit shows up with his family, and Harsin no-shows him to visit the family on a recruiting visit on campus. But we come out of the weekend getting the commitment of Tyler Jordan, a big, very needed and almost like a unicorn in Auburn, offensive tackle. Who's
what? What do you call that?
Unicorn.
No,
yeah.
no. And Auburn signed an offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean it happens.
Holy
unicorns!
Oh,
it is
yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, I agree.
And then
wow.
a legacy player, Colton Hood, who has a lot of upside, flipped him from Michigan State. And there's some kids. Auburn is all of a sudden getting in the mix for Grayson McCall, who's a quarterback that Florida's after him, Auburn's after him. We'll see. I think he's going to play his bowl game for Coastal Carolina, but the kid looks the part of a dual threat, and he's a real tough kind of player. So, and then meanwhile, he lands his coordinators. They may lack a splash of hiring, say, a Will Muschamp or an offensive, a Levy type of OC. However, what he's going to have in Philip Montgomery, my coaching friends have said A++ hire in Montgomery. The guy really knows offensive football, likes tempo. It's going to be very compatible with Freeze. And then Ron Roberts, another one who's been around. He's seen it all. By the way, Philip Montgomery is off of the Art Briles coaching tree, especially a passing attack, which never hurts. And so I think what Hugh Freeze is doing in a very short period of time is in stark contrast to the notion that in order for something to be good, it's got to take glacially slow.
Yeah, hold those thoughts inside of your cranium. We'll be right back. Doug Dean, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne, with more on Sidelines.
From Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Browne back here with you. Doug Dean, you were making a lot of great points before we went to the break about the difference in Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is all over the place in recruiting. Yet, question, this just came in from Charles Carrault, one of our listeners down in Luverne, Alabama. I'm Charles Carrault. But Charles Carrault, Luverne, Alabama says, that's all good what I hear Doug Dean saying, but Auburn's recruiting class still ranks dead last in the SEC. What does he think can happen between now and December signing period to get Auburn out of the basement? Charles Carrault, Luverne, Alabama.
It's a fair question, and I don't mind Carrault bringing me back down to earth, Rob. I admittedly lean rosy in my outlook on life, and that undoubtedly spills over into my analysis of Auburn football. I would just prefer to see the upside after the last 2 years. Really, you could go ahead and say 4 years of relative misery under Gus in his declining last few years, and then Harsin has been a disaster. But the caller is right. Whoever texted you, walking into a situation where these kids most of them have long since decided where they're most comfortable going. Some of them might already be committed to lucrative NIL deals. The more elite players, that's become standard fare. So really, Auburn sits at I think 32nd consensus ranking, which is terrible. But the speed with which Hugh Freeze is getting attention, getting communications with recruits, the potential to flip half a dozen players that at different points really liked a lot about Auburn. They were just being, rightly so, they were being negatively recruited that Harsin probably won't be there your whole tenure. There's right. It's a salvage job, but I don't think it's what I'm hearing, and the players that are considering Auburn and the traction that NIL on the Victory NIL has. You've got money in your back pocket to go recruit legally, of course. I think Kiffin said last summer at Media Days, cheating is legalized now. So among the things you want to worry about with Hugh Freeze is the dark shadows of recruiting violations at Ole Miss. That should not remotely be an issue. I don't know how it could be one unless you flagrantly got involved in pay for play, and there's no reason you would have to do that. So yeah, it's I don't see Auburn breaking inside the top 15, but I do see Hugh Freeze surprising people with some flips of very good players. And back to Grayson McCall, I'll let y'all react. This Coastal Carolina QB had a passing efficiency up to 234 halfway through a regular season, and that was ahead of the NCAA single season record of 230.4. And then you'll like these names he's associated with. In the history of the sport, only 3 FBS QBs have ever had a season with a passing efficiency north of 200, and those are 2019 Joe Burrow, 2020 Mac Jones, 2021 Grayson McCall. So if we hadn't signed the kid, he may go to Florida. I don't know what he'll do, but he reached out to Hugh Freeze wanting to talk, not the other way around.
Well, Auburn needs help. And you mentioned the unicorn sighting, Auburn signing an offensive lineman or committing one.
Commitment.
That's a commitment, yes. Now, they got to actually sign him. I'm not sure they know how to do that anymore at Auburn, but we'll see. But I'll say this. What Auburn – I noticed the other night on the Twitter sphere, a lot of people commenting about Hugh Freeze's coordinator hires. And I said, they must be good hires because everybody's weighing in, all Auburn's rivals. They didn't want these guys. They're terrible hires. No, what you should be concerned is if there's apathy, which is not the case. So they look to be really good hires by Hugh Freeze. So, the narrative a lot of people have about Hugh Freeze is going to be what they always want it to be. There's people that are still butthurt up in Knoxville over Lane Kiffin leaving after the 2009 season. Okay. Get over yourself. As Joey Bag of Donuts said, forget about it. There's nothing you can do about it. But Hugh Freeze, see what he does. I'm with you, Doug. He's doing a lot of things. Hey, it is official. Unfortunately, Mississippi State University has reported Mike Leach at age 61 passed away. This says last night at University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson. He had his family and everyone around him. And it's a long statement, and you'll read it. But I'll pray for and watch over the repose of the soul, as the Christian brothers would tell us at CBHS when someone passed away. And we will do that, and his legacy will live on forever. I'll say that.
Rob, would it be inappropriate just to have a couple of seconds silence for Coach Leach?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's the way it should be. I mean, we're not PC on this show. We're red meat and potatoes, as Maury Gaston says. But man,
great man was, and he changed the way we think about. I'll always keep close to my heart in football his line. All these people that push 50-50, run pass balance, all they're doing is agreeing to be stupid 50% of the time. There's so many Mike Leachisms that's so sad. Prayers for the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy, jump back in here with Doug Dean and me.
Yeah, it's one of those losses that, if you follow college football, he really had an impact on the game, because that air raid offense will always have coaches that are using, if not all the components of it, a lot of parts of it. and it was really effective. You see it being run at all levels of football now, and the fact that he was successful at places that were very hard to win at will always be something that he's remembered for. And his personality really was perfect to be the coach at those places he was at, because you had to be prepared for bumps in the road, because you didn't have all the recruiting advantages that you have at different places. And again, just my interactions with him, just made me believe that, he would make anybody comfortable. I mean, I mentioned it yesterday. He was the type of guy that would treat the maintenance man at the football building with the same respect, as a school president or any of his superiors. And he put you at ease. And I think he would proudly accept the fact that he was a different kind of guy, even quirky, but it was a really good quirky, because he always put people at ease, and I think that's always an important part of any kind of relationship you had, or even if you're having a conversation with somebody you've never talked with before. There's certain people that can put you at ease, and can find common ground with you, that have some familiarity with what you do or what you've done in the past, or you might even know some of the same people, or know people that know some of the same people that you do. And again, it's a big loss, and we all need to be praying and thinking about the Mike's family and the Mississippi State Nation, because man, this is a tough environment to try to think about what you're going to do to bring in another coach, because even though it's the last thing a lot of us want to think about, the reality is they have to make a move pretty quickly, because the world doesn't stop, and this early signing day is coming up soon. So they have to establish a direction of what they're going to do for now, if it's an interim coach, or they're going to make a quick search, outside the league or maybe within the league. But yeah, it's really a tough loss for everybody. And I had a bad feeling, because my wife had said she had seen a statement from Bill Snyder last night that, he had kind of indicated that we had lost Mike. But again, you always hold up hope. And we were thinking that, well, maybe the fact that nothing's being reported, maybe, there's been no change. But at the same time, I think everybody involved has to have a plan on how they're going to go forward with this and make the announcement, and then just try to plan everything so that once the announcement's made, they don't have to try to do all that stuff on the run. But anyway, very, very sad day for college football and for Mississippi State and the SEC.
Yeah, it really is, Doug.
Really well said, Jimmy, as always. And, many of us believe, I said this about the great Vince Dooley, we got to mourn that loss. He had, of course, by human standards, a really long and amazing life. We're not put here just to stack up birthdays, I'd like to think. It's more, hopefully, it's about, would it have made any difference in this world that you lived at all? And you better believe, we mere mortals, you start getting older and you think about legacy. What impact have I made? Have I made the world a better place? You better believe the legacy of Mike Leach will live long, long after the three of us, because he touched a lot of lives. He was a teacher, and he absolutely, to Jimmy's point, he changed the game. You could not look away from what he was doing with that air raid, and it certainly took us from 3 yards in a cloud of dust to something more sophisticated.
Yeah, and he got a lot of people hooked on football at young ages. I mean, I remember my kids and I, when they were little, watching Texas Tech in Texas. Michael Crabtree making that great catch, and Texas was 1 or 2 in the rankings. Texas Tech beat them. That was huge. And here's Texas Tech, Lubbock. All I know about Lubbock is from Altus, Oklahoma to Lubbock, Texas, there's more cotton grown than anywhere else in the United States, in the world, outside of the Yangtze River in China. And I just remember watching Mike Leach, and when he was out of coaching briefly on Sirius XM, remember his daily radio show? I mean, it was better than Bob Newhart interviewing Buddy the Elf. I mean, it was just every day. You couldn't listen to it enough. And I mean, he would talk, some of the most, maybe the best group of listeners that you will have in talk radio in any format. You know who it is? I got that from my friend David Hager's dad said it. Truck drivers. They're incredibly loyal and they're smart because they listen to a lot. They got a lot of time alone on the road. And Leach used to reach out. I mean, he had people call him on that show. God, it was cool. And like Jimmy said, he treated everybody like he wanted to be treated. And the guy was a genius. He had a law degree from Pepperdine, Jimmy. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was undergrad at BYU.
Yeah.
I never played college football. I played on the rugby team at BYU, because he wasn't a big guy, And but one of my favorite Mike Leach stories was that year he was on Sirius. My cousin, who's a hospital CEO, his son was a student assistant on Houston Nutt's staff at Ole Miss, and he would score recruiting video, and all that stuff. But he called Mike once on his show and asked for some dating tips, and Mike was more than glad to oblige. And he also gave a wedding preparation tips for prospective grooms, and there was never a subject that he couldn't offer really smart advice on. And we'll certainly all miss that, but his legacy will live for a long time.
Yeah, that's how it is. Doug, come back.
Real quick before I sign off, I'm going to have a delightful holiday celebration for my team of 40 great employees at Children's Human Resources, opening the home midday. But it's a little eerie. Around a week ago, before I had any inkling of this, tragic life threat that would befall Coach Leach, I was curious about the near term and longer term future of the SEC West coaching fraternity in particular. And the question, I posted a poll on one of the message boards, Auburn message boards, and I just asked respondents to who do you believe will be the first SEC West coach to retire, resign, or whatever, leave for any reason. And sadly, Coach Leach won that. I think people were already hearing that he was having some health challenges. And I just wish that poll were wrong. What a great man he was. Gone too soon, but he will never be forgotten. Goodness gracious, as I said, the impact he had on the game of football and on so many lives.
Yeah, I mean, because of the way he treated people. I mean, it's the way you treat people that can't do a thing in the world for you says everything about you. I think y'all know what I mean. And that's just, that Mike Leach and Mississippi State. I mean, he like Jimmy has talked about it in great detail, and you have. I mean, what he did to the game, how much fun it was, and how they were 8-4 this year, Mississippi State. Got that bowl game coming up against Illinois. And there's a couple of things that Mississippi State can do. They can, be down, but celebrate Mike Leach. He's going to want them to go out there and play their butts off. And I'll certainly be pulling for them because they're from the SEC. And I think that'll be huge. Doug, man, great stuff as always. You get it. Like few people can. And tell people, we got about a minute left before the break. 2 weeks from now, we'll be signing day eve. Actually, well, hold on. No, it's next week. We got a week. What do you think's going to happen? How much ground can Auburn make up in 60 seconds or less?
Yeah, I'm a lean Rosie. It's the holiday season. I think they're going to break inside the top 15. Which, if you think about it, I mean, long term, you got to be top 5 for 6 years if you really want to play with the big boys. But under the circumstances, if Freeze and the staff break into the top 15, that's impressive. And he'll augment that with smart use of the portal. And, we're in a reclamation project, so I think Auburn people have to be realistic in year one. But I think there would be a lot of glee if I'm right about that.
Well, hey, it could happen. And Hugh Freeze, like you said, he's out there working. I've seen coaches come in before in a short period of time, make up a lot of ground. And one more thing, guys. I don't think I can get that image watching it. The end of the Auburn-Mississippi State game, Mike Leach spent about a minute and a half on the field talking to Cadillac. I mean, that was pretty cool.
You better believe Cadillac's never going to forget that.
No, nobody will. God rest his soul, man. We'll be right back.
Family, hey. Mississippi State Nation. Talk to you guys next week, Rob.
All right, I'll talk to you. Thanks so much. We'll be right back. Dan Mathews checks in from Atlanta.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959, right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jimmy Hodge. Dan Mathews checks in, executive producer of Southern Sports Today, the Chuck Oliver Show over in Atlanta. 55 sticks in 8 states, as Chuck says. Also, Chuck can turn off in the afternoon on 680 The Fan at the Battery, where the Braves play, although Dan is basking in the glory of a World Series championship for his beloved favorite since birth, the Houston Astros. Man covers all sports, covers them about as well as anybody covers sports, and he is a pro. Dan Mathews, thanks for taking time to join us. We just heard the sad news officially confirmed about Mike Leach passing away. And, man, football's great. Rivalries are incredible. But it's about people, and we lost a great one that made covering football a lot of fun, and that's a legacy that'll last a long, long time.
Well, he was just such a breath of fresh air, Rob and Jimmy, in an industry that doesn't allow for a lot of individuals. He truly did it his way. I mean, I understand that Hal Mumme might have created the air raid offense. Mike Leach made it popular, and then wherever he went, I mean, he just was such an infectious personality when really probably he didn't really intend to be. But I mean, he truly was himself. I mean, how many times have we ever had press conferences of Nick Saban talking about, tracking a raccoon back to where it lives just to see where it lives. But I mean, that just shows you just the unique personality that he was. And, it's definitely a sad day. Number one for the Leach family. I mean, because you lose a husband, a father, so young, at 61 years old. You'd think that he had so much more time left in front of him. But no, this one hurts. This one, for first and foremost, like I said, the Leach family, the Mississippi State family, the Washington State community, the Texas Tech community, both of those fan bases that really came to love this man, and for good reason too, because he was truly unique and he was truly his own man.
Well, absolutely agree with you. And as you cover so many people as you do, and you and Chuck, every day, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, Southern Sports Today, y'all talk to the top names in all of college football, coaches, media personalities, players, current, former, whatever. You just don't come along many people that when you ask them a question, you're going to get an honest answer. It may take a week or two to get to it, but man, he would and Jimmy talked about this, how he treated people that he didn't know, like he'd known them, for years. And you've interviewed a lot of people, Dan. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it points back to, again, the unique nature. Funny enough, at the beginning of his tenure at Texas Tech, my Uncle Sam covered him for the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. And my uncle told me stories of random late night phone calls to return a phone call. So he'd wake up the next morning and see that he had missed a call from Coach Leach, or even too, I remember one time of the Big 12 coaches teleconference, and somebody had asked him about playing against TCU or Texas or somebody, whoever it might have been at the time, and he asked the guy, "Would you please stop for a second? Would you please give me a second?" And the guy, "Yeah, sure." And then you hear Mike, "Hi, I'll take a number 4, Diet Coke." It just kind of shows you just, he didn't march to somebody else's drum. He was his own drummer. And, it's again, in an industry, selfishly, it kind of feels weird to talk about this right now because it just happened, and hopefully it's not lacking perspective. But I think more than anything, I hope that it's portraying just how thankful we were to be able to cover such a man. As it kind of points to, again, this isn't an industry that allows for a lot of individualism. Football as a game doesn't allow for a lot of individualism. And even though he was uniquely individual, he didn't take away from the overall team. And I think that was something too that was just so remarkable. And while the championships and everything else that seemingly we as coaches measure them up to, boy, he made up for it in many other ways. And it's a massive loss today.
Yeah, it is. And just think about looking at his coach's office, the Pirate, sitting over there in the chair, fully dressed, and you'd be trying to carry on a serious interview with him about an upcoming game or the upcoming season or whatever, and you'd look over at that, and just you couldn't help but start smiling and going, wow. But he knew football really well. Mentally, one of the brighter minds that you would ever come across.
Yeah, it's like I said. He, along with Hal Mummy, are really credited with the air raid offense, which, God, you see so many of these concepts now that are out there because of him. Remember when he first got here, it was, oh, man, this is so unique, but you're never going to beat anybody. Well, then he got Michael Crabtree and Graham Harrell, and he not only beat some people, he put a scare in the people. Beat Texas that one night. That's a game that I'm sure we're going to see, replayed classically right now as a memory of Coach Leach. That game in 2008, where they beat Texas and the fans rushed the field, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, well, air raid is finally it's finally got someone. There was that one. There was, Gardner Minshew a couple of years ago having a season. Remember his recruiting, because the thing was too is again, his recruiting pitch. You didn't really get the sense that Mike Leach was a guy that I don't know if pander is the right word, but he was definitely going to shoot you straight. And remember, Gardner Minshew was just going to go to Alabama with the hope of, hey, let me get as much knowledge from these guys as possible, and then I'm going to go into coaching. Whereas Mike Leach then got in touch with them and said, you're a hell of a quarterback. Why don't you come lead the country in passing? And that spoke to Gardner Minshew, and sure enough, he went to Washington State and became a character in his own right. It was kind of a marriage made in heaven, if you will, for those two guys to work together at Washington State. So, it's again, I think the stories go on and on. You just, all you have to do right now is open social media. And, usually we detest social media from the standpoint of just all the nastiness that's on there. But I guess if there's a positive today, you're seeing a lot of the good times of Mike Leach that are littering timelines. And Littering's probably not the right word, but populating timelines, which I guess if there's a positive to take from that, that's one of them.
No, I agree with you. And I think about it. This is something that came talking about, people that died tragically, and this one way too young. This is from Jerry Kirby. Sent this out last night about the Brandon Burlsworth Award, the walk-on award, and he thinks, in his opinion, and I know Jerry, he's married to my wife's niece. The guy watches more football than any human being on earth and knows the football. He's a great husband and dad too. But I'm going to tell you something. He talked about Brandon Burlsworth, the life he lived, and that legacy. And so Stetson Bennett wins the Brandon Burlsworth Award. That's a big deal. Just like there's going to be something that'll be honoring Mike Leach going forward. But those are legacies of Brandon Burlsworth, the walk-on. Mike Leach treated everybody, a walk-on or a scholarship player, with a lot of respect and compassion. He was tough. I didn't play for him, but I don't think you'd hear this kind of outpouring of love and just sympathy for him and his family if he wasn't those good qualities we're talking about, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is when you're younger, you want to just kind of blend in with the crowd. You want, your goal is to be as popular as possible and to be, no different than really anybody else, because then, that saves you from ridicule. It saves you from, just anything that could possibly come with not going with the crowd. You really think about it, the unique people are the ones who later on in life are the ones who show you, no, it's good to be different. As a matter of fact, you need to be different, because being the same, sorry about that. Being the same, I'll watch my speed. Being the same is not, it makes you average, and average people don't get remembered. Unique and daring and all of these different, ways to describe people, that's how you get remembered. And you're exactly right with Leach. I mean, I'm sure when the time comes, there will be some sort of honor for him. I wouldn't be surprised if, his alma mater, BYU, does something for him. If I were Texas Tech, I absolutely would, because he gave that program and that school an identity that, frankly, they didn't have. I mean, Spike Dykes was, and look, I'm going down the wrong path here, but, he did great things to bring Texas Tech's program where it was. I think that Mike Leach took it even a step further. And I'm glad now, as time has gone on, that people have not held the Craig James, Adam James situation against him. If anything, I feel like as time has gone on and more, of that story has come out, that people have said, he really wasn't the problem. It was the other way around. And so I think that also shows you too, if nothing else, if you're at Texas Tech and the community there in Lubbock, to, do everything you can to say, hey, it didn't end the way that it should have ended. Let's do it right now. And if that's a plaque, if that's a trophy, if that's flying a pirate flag, I don't know what it is. I think if you're Texas Tech, it would be a nice way to bring them back home, kind of deal.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with it. Jimmy, we just got a few minutes. And Dan, if you can stay with us, we're about 5 minutes from the break. If you can come back a few minutes after that, great. If not, let us know. But Jimmy, jump back in here.
Yeah, I guess we will always remember this last SEC Media Days where Mike Leach has a 5-second opening statement and opens the floor to questions. I mean, that was so awesome, And when you combine it with Lane Kiffin, who was a longtime friend of Mike Leach's, where he comes out at SEC Media Days and said, I think I'm just going to scrap the coat and tie deal, or at least the tie. And he said, Commissioner Sankey, you had been mentioning a couple of things to me, and I decided, Commissioner, I think I'm going to set the stage and just let you know for future SEC media days, feel free to loosen up. And we'll all have a better time at these media day gatherings. And Mike Leach, he loosened people up. He made things interesting. And I'm glad Dan brought up the story about Gardner Minshew, because he was all set. He was maybe 2 or 3 days from going to Alabama to be a grad assistant for the sole purpose of learning how to be a coach. And then Leach gives him the call. And I think he led the Pac-12 in passing that year and just had a sensational season, which got the notice of NFL teams. And he had, his first couple of years were just really impressive. And don't forget his influence on the coaching side, because his most preeminent a pupil was Lincoln Riley. He was he taught Lincoln, I think, during his days at Texas Tech, that he really had the ability to be an outstanding coach, and he followed Leach, to it got started at Texas Tech, and he got him the opportunity to work with Stoops at Oklahoma. And people don't tend to forget that when Bob Stoops got the Oklahoma job, Mike Leach was his choice as his first offensive coordinator. After that first season, he gets the Texas Tech job, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly as you said. I mean, yeah, Lincoln Riley. I mean, Graham Harrell is now a coach. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, is a coach in the NFL. I mean, that's the other part of it as well, Jimmy. You bring up a good point, is that he influenced so many others to do this and to kind of do it the renegade way, I guess, if you will. Because when he came in, I mean, we'd had, the run and shoot. We'd had the West Coast, Air Coryell, all that kind of stuff. But this was kind of all of that on steroids, if you will. And it was, this is a weird looking thing. What's going on here? We're throwing the football 60 times a game. Our offensive linemen have these really wide splits. Like, this is kind of strange, Coach. And, honestly, before I step out, growing up in the state of Texas, it was Texas high school football. You ran the football. You didn't throw the football. You ran the football. Once Mike Leach got there and 7-on-7 really started to catch on, it's funny how all of a sudden there were a lot of coaches out there saying, yeah, that spread offense thing, I think I'm going to do that. And he changed high school football in the state of Texas, really, when you think about it, too.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question he did that. And Dan, what to me, you look at 15,000 coaches that go to that Texas high school coaches convention. That's a lot of people. That's head coaches and assistants at all those football schools all over that state. And it's spread nationwide. It's kind of, I have a saying at the University of Texas in Austin, what happens here changes the world. And what happened with Mike Leach changed college football forever.
In a positive way. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. Dan, look, if you can stay through the break, great. If not, let people know how they can follow you, because I know you're on a tight schedule, but we love having you on, and people need to be listening to you and Chuck.
Yeah, appreciate it. You can follow us at Chuck Oliver Show, and today we're going to have the return of Dave Bartu. If you haven't listened to Dave Bartu, I really suggest you do. Talk about somebody who does it their own way. Dave has, through his own line, tells stories through numbers in terms of college football. He's fantastic. We have him on for 2 segments every single Tuesday. Chris Nee from 24/7 talking Florida State. Tell you what, Mike Norvell's program looks like they're building themselves up to be a pretty special team in 2023. We'll talk about that and much more. And then Wes Rucker from Go Vols 247 talks some Tennessee. And on my way in right now to get ready for the show, might see if we need to try to get a Mississippi State guest, or maybe save that for another day. But as of right now, we've got those 3 guests. So 11 to 1 Eastern, please tune on in.
Absolutely, Dan. Again, thanks so much. Look forward to next week. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with more Sidelines, hour number 2.
All right, here we are on our second day of Red River's 12 Days of Christmas, and your 2 turtle doves today is going to be a $19.99 basic oil change. Come on by, bring your vehicle in, no appointment needed, get your oil change done for $19.99. You're out of here for about $20. That's a savings of about $40 from what we normally charge for these basic oil changes. That's today only. Your 2 turtle doves, come see us.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Great stuff. Dan Mathews, executive producer over in Atlanta. Chuck Oliver show. That's coming up right after us. Just crank it up. You're working, of course. You're driving around. You could be out in the duck blind having us synced in. I know a lot of hunters listen to us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Guns up, gentlemen. And I hope that everybody out there is driving safely and, of course, focused on the task at hand. But, man, Mike Leach, he really did. He did so much for football. It's just, again, he'll be talked about. Hey, there are a lot of coaches that have been gone 40, 50, 60 plus years. And we talk about them probably every day. That's because they did something that really, really mattered and left a hell of a legacy. Jimmy, before we get in here, Jordan Hill is going to jump on with us in just a second. 24/7 Sports from Georgia. And I'm anxious to hear. I like what Jerry Kirby said. He thinks, and Jerry is on another level from us mere mortals when it comes to knowing college and pro football and studying it and watching it. I don't know anybody else that watches every NFL game, either during the season or he tapes them and he goes back and watches them. And he draws up plays and diagrams. He's a genius. He understands it. But I like what Audrey found on his Facebook page this morning, talking about he thinks that the Brandon Burlsworth Trophy is a bigger deal than the Heisman Trophy now. And it's, he makes a lot of really salient points. And it's hard to argue with Jerry Kirby about this because the Heisman, and I want to talk with Jordan Hill about this. What is it? I mean, is it just the best offensive skill player on the highest rated team or the best NFL prospect on the highest rated team? Or is it what it's supposed to be, the best player who, emulates all the things that we love and respect and cherish about college football? And I think a lot of people in the Southeastern Conference, not just Tennessee fans, but as a whole, lost interest in the Heisman after Peyton got screwed out of the Heisman in 97. Charles Woodson and him both had 17-year NFL careers, but Peyton was the greatest player in college football that year. It was not even close. But we also know 06 and 07, Troy Smith and Tim Tebow won the Heisman Trophy versus Darren McFadden. And Darren McFadden was the best player in college football. So it's just what happens. Now, Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, joins us right now. Good morning, Jordan. Thanks for taking time to join us. I just was making some comments that Jerry Kirby, a friend of mine, listens to the show every day up in Clarksville, Tennessee, football junkie, said he thinks the Brandon Burlsworth Trophy is a bigger deal than the Heisman Trophy now. Well, Stetson Bennett the fourth, and I talk about him all the time. His story is one that you need to read to your kids at night as a bedtime story about perseverance and never giving up. For him to win the Brandon Burlsworth Award, that's a big, big deal. And I hope Georgia really, really makes a big deal out of that because that is a great honor. And I hope you feel the same about it as I do.
Yeah, and I hope you guys can hear me all right. I was having some issues with them. All right, good deal. But yeah,
great as always.
Yes, great. Yeah, I mean, it was really inspirational to kind of see Stetson get that award, and two, if anyone listening has not watched his acceptance speech, I would recommend it, just because he was borderline emotional. I mean, he didn't cry, but you could kind of tell he was sort of searching for the words. And I asked Stetson about that on Friday up in New York, as he was getting ready for the Heisman ceremony. And he said, being up there, he said, I kind of had an idea of what I was going to say, but he talked about Brandon Burlsworth, and he said, looking sort of from Brandon's perspective, what his perspective would have been at a story like Stetson's, he said it kind of allowed me to think about my own story more than I could if I was just sitting here, thinking about everything I've gone through. You could tell that Stetson, that award meant a lot. And it was sort of a weird situation. He finds out he's a Heisman finalist while he's there in Arkansas waiting for that ceremony to begin. And, he's interviewed on there and, kind of going through and handling and hanging out with the other two finalists, Aiden O'Connell and Marshall from Troy. But I mean, I think that he understood the magnitude of that award. And I think if there's anyone who could really understand and could really appreciate that award, it was someone like Stetson. And I don't think that's one that he took lightly.
No. And you think about Carlton Marshall, NCAA all-time leading tackler, walk-on, 5'9", David Schultze cast, 105 FM in Mobile, was on yesterday, talks about him a lot. And Aiden O'Connell. I mean, these are guys, and we had Ben Troop on the show yesterday, Jordan, ESPN Coastal over in Savannah. Now, he was a All-American tight end at Florida, played 5 years in the NFL. But he said the guys that made him the player he is were the walk-ons and the scout team. That says it all, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, and that's something I want to write about in the next day or so. They had a press conference on Saturday with all 4 Heisman finalists, and you could ask them different questions, and getting to the very end, Stetson talked about basically how, the team's success had got him to this point. They go through, the other finalists are talking. We think the press conference is over, and Stetson says, well, I want to say one more thing. So they let him talk, and he said, he just credited the scout team. He said, they are what has made us what we are. And I think that speaks volumes. I mean, that, he understands. And he said, when we're out there on the practice field, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's their game day. They have to rise to the occasion. And no one understands that more than Stetson Bennett, because that was his role. And that's where fans really first heard about him, was getting ready for that Rose Bowl. He was basically imitating Baker Mayfield. And, the coaches were like, hey, this guy we got on the scout team, Stetson Bennett, he's done an excellent job getting us ready for Baker. And it worked out. And then, you thought at the time, like, hey, good job by that Stetson guy. He really helped them. And turns out he had a whole lot more left to accomplish at Georgia.
Does Kirby Smart get close with his players? I mean, we all know about the relationship that a quarterback and a head coach can have, because he's the guy that touches the ball on every snap. Have you seen anything that looks like they have a close relationship between player and coach?
I think so. I think there's a mutual respect that has really grown between them. Kirby, it's funny sometimes to hear Kirby talk about Stetson. He says, he's stubborn as hell, but it's with good reason. And Kirby's talked about, I'm trying to remember which game that was. He said we went to the sideline after a play, and Stetson was saying it was this coverage, and some of the coaches were saying, no, it wasn't. And he said, well, we went back and looked, and Stetson was right. So I think, I think that Kirby really respects the way Stetson goes about his business. And I think he has seen him, something that Kirby has really harped on these last few weeks. And I mean, I think he's telling the truth, is that, we basically tried every way in the world not to give him this job. They've got really highly touted quarterbacks on this roster, and he just kept doing enough stuff that they just could not give it to somebody else. I do think that there's a real mutual respect between the two, and I think that Stetson understands that Kirby's going to do what he can to put Stetson in the best position to succeed. And look at where they are; they're 2 wins away from back-to-back national titles.
Yeah, and Stetson Bennett is as the walk-on compared to the 4 and the 5-star recruits. It's kind of like the name brand groceries or the name brand jacket versus the one you buy at Walmart for $20. And if you put it on a good-looking woman like my wife, it looks great. And That's what it is. People can't get over it. But that you just said it. Kirby Smart said we tried every way in the world not to give him the job, and look what he did. I just think, and to hear Lauren Smith talk about him, going down to Blackshear, Georgia, and spending the day with him, and to see him just do what he does, something about it. But Georgia wins national championships at the end of the day, Jordan and Jimmy, with quarterbacks from South Georgia who grew up hunting and fishing. That's who they win with. And so it's a cool story. And I hope, Jordan, you're there with us.
Yeah.
It's a great story about the kid from Blackshear, Buck Ballou from Valdosta. I saw Buck Ballou over at 680 when I was in Atlanta about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and was talking to him in the lobby up there at 680 at the Battery. I mean, that guy looks like he's 25, 30 years old. I mean, he's never gonna, he's a cool guy. Stetson Bennett. I don't know Stetson Bennett. I've never met him. You have. Would you want to go hang out with him, go hunting and fishing with him, drink some road sodas?
Oh, absolutely. I want to get him out on a bass boat and see what he's got to say. And hey, I'll say this too on a serious note.
Yeah.
I love listening to Stetson answer questions because you can watch the wheels turning. Like he is not going to BS an answer. Now he may wait he might sit there 10 seconds and like really think about what he wants to say. Yeah. And there's been times he'll be answering a question. He'll go, and no, I can't say that. And then but he's a really sharp guy, and to listen to him do interviews, and he gets asked all kinds of things. Yeah. But he's a sharp guy. I just enjoy it as much of anything, just listening to sort of his perspective and the way he looks at things.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be a great football coach one day, because people that have to work as hard as he did to get what he got learn everything along the way. Like Jimmy Hodge. Jimmy, jump in here with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, talking Georgia, Stetson Bennett, and repeating.
Yeah, well, also, I'd like to interject. Of course, this is a really sad day for all of us, but how Mike Leach kind of had a role in Stetson's journey, because 2 years ago, I really think that Georgia-Mississippi State game really was the coming out party for Will Rogers when they played that game in Athens. But at the same time, Stetson a couple of weeks earlier had gotten injured in that Florida game. Ironically, when he threw a touchdown pass to, I think, Rosemy Jacksaint, which gave him a 2-score lead, but yet both players got injured on the same play, and Stetson, I think, tried to come back, but really couldn't. He was injured, and that injury lingered for a while. So that Mississippi State Georgia game was the first game in which JT Daniels was given clearance from the medical staff to play. And he throws for 405 yards, and it's a 31-24 shootout, a game that I think Georgia fans will always remember. And then JT goes from that point to lead the Dogs to an undefeated stretch there in the win over Cincinnati, in the Peach Bowl. So going into the next year, Stetson's in a familiar spot. He's thinking he's going to be the backup. And then JT has those repeated problems with his labrum, and he didn't know for 3 or 4 weeks early in the season until pregame warmups if he was going to be able to play or not, and he wasn't. And then Stetson stepped in, and the rest is history. And that also played a part, I think, in the Stetson Bennett story. His refusal to, just lay down when things didn't look like they were going to work out. He kept plugging, and he is where he is now. But what do you remember about that 31-24 game in Athens? Because now it really puts it into perspective that Mike Leach was part of it. Will Rogers, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and then the JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett story kind of I guess it just turned out in a way that we weren't sure that it would.
Yeah, it was kind of funny listening to Stetson talk about that this week about being benched for JT. And, he said coming out of that Florida game, he had gotten hurt. He had not played very well that Florida game, the Kentucky game the week before. And he talked about Kirby coming to him. And Stetson said at the time, I was thinking, why are you coming to me? Like, I know I'm benched. Like, you don't got to sit me down. But he said Kirby was really nice about it and said, look, we're going to go with JT this week for the Mississippi State game, and we'll see how it goes. And Stetson said, and that freaking Joker went out there and threw for 400. He said, I pretty much knew at that point that, that I was not going to be playing. But, again, great perspective from Stetson. And I wrote about this yesterday. He talked about, he understood why he was benched. And he said, look, I wasn't playing good enough. He said, and, in a way that made it easier, but also I understood that I could do something about it. He said I could get better. And, he said that was sort of the mindset. And again, credit to the guy because he'd already left Georgia once. And when he gave that Burlsworth acceptance speech, he said, people told me not to go back to Georgia when he was leaving JUCO. And he was asked about that last week. And he said, we were, I think people thought that I was just a roster filler, which he said, maybe I was. But, this is a guy that had been told you can't and no a lot. And after he was benched in favor of JT Daniels, who, again, JT Daniels never lost a game as a starter at Georgia. Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
But it just kind of motivated Stetson. And to his credit, look, he's still a young guy. I can understand being in that situation and being frustrated and saying, to heck with this. But he didn't take that attitude. And, it obviously paid off for him in a big, big way.
Jordan, how old is Stetson Bennett?
25? Let's see. Yeah, he's 25.
I seem to remember Billy Sims out of Hooks, Texas, played for Oklahoma. He was 25 or 30 when he was in his fourth year there. I don't know academically if he was even a sophomore,
Hey, remember Chris Winkie? He went and played
28.
baseball. Yeah, Chris was a little bit older than his competition.
Yeah,
Well,
Hendon Hooker's 24. I think when they played Georgia and Tennessee played, it was the first matchup of quarterbacks that age, that anybody could remember, except maybe the post-war days of World War II when everybody came back and played for Army, and that man, did Army have some teams in those mid-40s and late 40s?
And my dad talks about, he goes, all those guys, I heard Burt Reynolds talking one time at the Orpheum in Memphis about his life and films and just what he did. He said, I played football for Florida State University, right? When we started the program, we were a girls' school, and we'd play Auburn and Alabama and these SEC schools. And they had all these guys that had been in the 82nd Airborne and jumping into Korea and World War II and coming in there. And he said they were 25, 30 years old, had families. It was another world, man. He goes, but I learned a lot about being tough. But Jordan, if you can, couple of more minutes through the break. Got a couple of more questions because that's great stuff that Jimmy just said and you said about Stetson Bennett. That award, what it means to him, and like I said, he's going to be a great coach. I hope he gets a shot in the NFL. We'll talk about it right after this quick break.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection. And they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jordan Hill 24/7 Sports over in Athens, Georgia. Covers the Dogs. Man, he covers them and does a hell of a writer. I suggest you follow him. Puts out a lot of timely information on Twitter. Not just, throwing stuff against the wall. It's organized. It's structured. If you're ADD and OCD like me, you need structure. What were we talking about? I can't forget. Jordan and Jimmy. Stetson Bennett now. What's going on over in Athens right now? Team's getting ready. I don't know Kirby Smart. You do. But I bet he's saying, guys, it doesn't matter where we're playing the game. Atlanta, whatever. We're playing it in Atlanta. It's going to be a heavy dog crowd. But he'll probably say something like, you're either elite or you're not. What do you think he's doing to motivate this team to get ready to play a team that shamelessly was backdoored into the college football playoff? I don't agree that they should be there. We had Bill Hancock, head of the playoff committee, on Friday. He said, we got the 4 best teams. I love that guy. He's great. But I would still think, if Alabama and Tennessee were 5 and 6 or whatever, should have been one of them, but it didn't happen that way. So let's talk about how does Kirby keep this team focused, and what are they doing getting ready?
Well, I think a big point that I think he would really push to the players is that this Ohio State team, I think, is going to come in fired up, because Ryan Day talked about this the Sunday of the announcement, the 4 playoff teams, that there was a week there they were still preparing, but, they had to wait for someone else to lose, USC getting beat. I mean, they thought their season was essentially over, that they would obviously still play in a bowl game, but their championship hopes were done. And all of a sudden, Sunday, really Friday night, USC loses that game, and you think, okay, there is a real possibility. I think this Ohio State team, for all intents and purposes, they're going to come into Atlanta with nothing to lose. I mean, if they lose, everyone's going to say, well, yeah, you were the 4th seed. You barely got in the playoff as it was, and you were playing the defending national champion. And look, they're talented. If there was one thing other than hanging out with Stetson, just listening to Stetson talk in New York, that struck me, I was very impressed with C.J. Stroud. Just the way his humility, just the way he answered questions, just a really sharp guy. And I'd never really listened to C.J. at all. And, I probably have seen a few interviews here and there, but they have talent. That offense can make plays. Marvin Harrison Jr., C.J. Stroud, like I said, not having Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to hurt. But, I mean, it's not the end-all, be-all for them. So I think that Kirby's really going to harp on this is an Ohio State team that's got nothing to lose and would love nothing more to beat Georgia and try to, have a rematch in the game. I think if you're outside the SEC, I do think one of the more appealing potential matchups is to see Michigan and Ohio State play it for the national title. I think that Kirby understands that Ohio State's going to come into Atlanta and they're going to kind of want to be the spoiler and put out the defending national champ.
Dog fans, you beat Ohio State, which I believe you will. Won't be easy, and I agree with your angle. They're coming in playing with house money. Go Michigan or TCU. Who would you rather play?
If you're Georgia fans, you'd rather play TCU, because I think TCU is, and I think Georgia could beat either one, but I think that Michigan team is really, really good. And the thing that makes me think Georgia beats Ohio State ultimately is that I don't think Ohio State will match Georgia's physicality. I think Michigan has a much better chance to do that against Georgia than, say, Ohio State. And that's not to, dismiss TCU. TCU's been a fun team to watch this year. But
yeah,
if you're telling me from a fan's perspective who you would rather see, I'd say it had to be TCU. I just think your chances are significantly higher if you play them.
All right, look, I know you got a tight schedule this morning, and we try to keep you on task. We love having you on here. If you can stay, great. But if not, let people know how they can follow you. And again, folks, it ain't just Georgia stuff. It's college football stuff. You need to be following Jordan Hill. It doesn't matter what age a journalist is. If they care and they're getting after it and they love what they do and they do what they love, it's obvious. And it's obvious with Jordan Hill. Every time he's on here, I think we all learn a lot. So keep up with him and how they follow you.
Appreciate that, Rob. But yeah, at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247 on Twitter, dogs247.com. A lot of stuff still to write this week, and we're actually going to get some interviews with Kirby and a couple players tomorrow, kind of break up what's sort of a dead period before the early signing period and the semifinals at the end of the month. So fun time, and want to make sure to thoughts and prayers with Mike Leach's family and all the coaching community, and also just Mississippi State. Just what a tragedy, and so kind of, I didn't really know Mike Leach at all, but man, just very tough news this morning.
Oh, it is. And we've been talking about it, and you hate it. It happens, but he was only 61 years old. And like Jimmy and y'all talked about that game, there's his legacy, the game in 2020, Stetson, JT Daniels, what happened, Will Rogers coming out party, 31-24 in Athens. And there's so many stories like that. But Jordan, we always appreciate you taking time to join us. We get a lot out of it. Have a great week, and let's do it again next week.
Sounds great. Appreciate you guys.
All right, so much. Yeah, I'm just getting information here. Just, Dave Cody, my friend I've known, since 1983, was 36 years TV sports anchor in Austin. Just said he posted a tribute to Mike Leach on Facebook, interviewed him many, many times when he brought Texas Tech to Austin, Big 12 media days, whatever. Texas is a big state, but it's a small group in that media that really knows what's going on. Guys like Bo Carter, Ken Capps, Dave Cody. Dave said this morning, Seattle television stations ran his obituary, because he was at Washington State for 9 years, 10, I think, a long time before he came to Mississippi State. But nationwide, people talking about celebrating his great life, and love it if Dave Cody could check in. We're going to be joined in a few minutes, though, by Brad Logan Media Network, who covers all things Mississippi, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Jackson State, Southern Miss. He's everywhere. Alcorn State. He covers from the coast to the hill country, up to Memphis, which is the capital of North Mississippi. Jackson is the capital of Southern Mississippi. Of course, most of those people south of Jackson think New Orleans is their capital. But the great state of Mississippi, man, and all over the country remembering Mike Leach. Jimmy, JT Daniels in the portal again. How long can this guy play college football?
Well, anybody that had eligibility during that pandemic season 2 years ago got a free season, and so I think it's going to run out, I think, next season. If you were a freshman in that 2020 season, since that didn't count, 1, 2, 3. No, it's going to be 2 more years if you were a freshman in 2020. So again, but you can thank Kevin Warren and Larry Scott for that, since they decided at first that they would not be playing a fall season. And then after about 5 or 6 weeks, they came crawling back on their bellies to beg for an opportunity to not only play a fall season, but be eligible for the playoff by playing only, well, they said they were going to play 7 games. It turned out that some Pac-12 schools with positive tests only played 4, maybe 5. And then the Big Ten changed their own requirement of having to play 7 games so that Ohio State could be accommodated to play in the Big Ten championship game and then get in the playoff. So anybody that's getting that extra year of eligibility, which has been a lot of players, and also an extra year of academic, credit and time to maybe work on your master's if you want it, or graduate schooling, you can thank those 2 guys. And so I think it's 2 more seasons. I think the 2024 season will be the last year in which players that were freshmen in 2020 will be able to, use their last year of eligibility off that pandemic year.
Okay, so yeah, freshman year for JT Daniels was 2019 at Southern Cal. 2020, he's at Georgia, starts those last 4 games and gets sacked 10 times. He's not real mobile. And then you go to 21 Stetson, 22 Stetson. He's at West Virginia this year, and now he's in the portal again. Hope he finds someplace to make him happy. And I hope when he gets a job outside of football, I don't know if he'll make it in the NFL or not, that he doesn't switch jobs this frequently as well. I mean, because that's going to be a tough one, unless he works in the fast food services industry or something like that. He may be qualified for that. I don't know. But Jimmy, you go back. We're talking about this before Brad Logan joins us. That legacy of Mike Leach started in Texas, at Texas Tech, and man, it reverberated everywhere. So it's really cool. We're going to have Brad Logan on with us now out of Bruce, Mississippi, Logan Media Network, one of the best guys out there covering all things Mississippi. And Brad, man, I mean, it's terrible news. The last few days, everybody has been keeping Mike Leach and his family and the Mississippi State family and everybody down in Mississippi and all over and praying for a miracle. It didn't happen, but where you are in Mississippi, you know the state up and down like very few people do. I know you've got some stuff to say about Mike Leach and his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, you do all you can to pull a positive from a negative. And,
yeah.
Mike was at a media function with the Mississippi State media this past Saturday, and a lot of my friends in the media had a chance to visit with him. And away from the football field and away from the press conference, Mike is completely different and able to talk about family, talk about Christmas, talk about anything you can imagine. Here we are today, a couple of days later, and Mike's not with us. And, the collective college football community is grieving today. They're grieving because not only is Mike Leach an incredible football coach, he's a really good personality, and he's someone that we followed for a number of years at all of his stops, and now he's not with us any longer. So, pretty sad day for college football.
Yeah, and Brad, in your role, working with Ole Miss and, Mississippi State, I can say all the schools in Mississippi, I love that state. I spend a lot of time down there, and I do in Arkansas. If you live in Memphis, you're part of it. What is this loss? Where does Mississippi State go? Because they were 8-4. They got the win in the Egg Bowl. The people back in that program, state people love the grass. They love the brick and mortar. They love that university, like very few schools fan bases do. And now they've lost Mike Leach. That's tough. But talk about the love and respect that they had for Mike Leach and will always have.
Yeah, well, he came in under at that point John Cohen, who's now the director of athletics at Auburn, and came in under an opportunity when Joe Moorhead left. He was pretty much let go, and it was kind of an odd hire, to be honest. And I do think at the end of the day it worked. I think what Mike did on the field, the way he recruited, the way he left the program, out of no one's expected anything like this to happen. But you look back and you look at his career, you look at Will Rogers, who had a really nice tribute on Twitter earlier today. So many players, former players, have come out. But I think more than anything is what we've seen from the collective college football world. All of the official Twitter accounts, social accounts, former coaches, players, media types. Everyone's come out and talked about how much he will be revered and how much he will be missed. I think, you fast forward a little bit, you look at this program now, obviously you want to give the players and the community and the fans and the university a chance to grieve, and that's understandable. But the show goes on, and you look going forward, and this obviously will be another conversation for another day, but Mississippi State is without an athletic director. Dr. Mark Keenum right now is serving a number of hats. Bracky Brett, who's done a phenomenal job as an associate athletic director, is kind of holding the ship together. Now all of a sudden you're without a football coach, so Zach Arnett is going to serve as the head coach for the ReliaQuest Bowl. And Zach will do a great job. I'll be honest. I don't know that Zach may not make an incredible head coach for Mississippi State to kind of keep this thing together for a couple of years. This is tough. This is not a coach that lost a couple of games and gets fired and moves to his condo in Florida. This is a coach that had a life-changing event. This is a coach that passed away. And I think it was Ross Dellinger that pointed out, and I forget the coach's name, but this is the first sitting Division I head coach that passed away on the job since 1980 in the SEC. And I think you have to go back to 2009 before you talk about a sitting head coach in Division I that passed away on the job. So this is not common at all. This is something that we haven't seen, and it's just something that everyone's kind of hugging their family a little bit tighter today. Everyone's kind of looking around and saying, we're not promised tomorrow, and Mike Leach is a perfect example. But what a heck of a legacy Mike will leave, both on and off the field. And today we'll remember Mike Leach.
Yeah, and you think about people, a lot of college football fans, we hear about the big donors and all, and they're great. I absolutely. But it's the people that, sacrifice to support these schools. And they really get into who their coach is. And I know a lot of Mississippi State folks. They took a hell of a lot of pride that he came across the country to lead the Bulldog program, Brad. That was a big deal and always will be to them.
Yeah, and, I think a lot of people will say that it's really fitting that Mike was 0-2 against Ole Miss. And I don't know specific numbers, but I know he really struggled with rivalry games when he was at Washington State against Washington. I know the numbers weren't great. So I think it was pretty fitting that Mike won the Egg Bowl and went out a winner in his very last game as a college football coach. He changed the game as offensive coordinator at Kentucky. Of course, we remember all of his teams at Washington State, and then the games he had against Texas Tech. As head coach is Texas Tech, and he's kind of all over the place. And just to be able to come to Mississippi State, his very last stop at the very young age of 61 years old, had an event at his home and just couldn't overcome it. Just never really could overcome that obstacle. Mike dealt with some health issues this year. The university put out that he dealt with some pneumonia, but obviously don't know if that had anything to do with this. Obviously, that's irrelevant. But he did have a heart event that eventually would cause his passing. And there's no doubt that the fan base will
Brad, hold those thoughts. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. I want you to hold those thoughts because you're as close to it as anybody right after this quick break.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
Back with Brad, Logan, Jimmy Hodge, Rob Browne here on Sidelines Tuesday college football, basketball blitz. And Brad, you were talking, making a lot of great points about what Mike Leach has meant and will always mean to the Mississippi State fan base, but to the state of Mississippi as a whole.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that I expect that Mississippi State will do something to honor him. And, it'll be something that we'll always remember throughout our life that Mike passed as a sitting head coach of Mississippi State. I think one thing we've seen throughout the world of college football, and including Ole Miss, both the Ole Miss administration, its fans, its football team, has absolutely reached out to Mississippi State through social channels. And, I think it's really cool to see everybody kind of come together and understand that it is just football at the end of the day. And it's one thing to where, you can talk about us in Mississippi. And, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you hate Mississippi State. If you're a State fan, you hate Ole Miss. We can talk about each other, but nobody else better talk about us. So yeah. I think that's kind of the sentiment today across the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, it is, and it's a great state. It's like Arkansas. It's less than 3 million people, but I spend a lot of time down there. You live there. I've been to a lot of games in Starkville and a lot in Oxford, and man, they got a lot of pride in Mississippi. In fact, we got a big coffee table book over at the hunting lodge called Mississippians, and go read it. You'd be surprised how many of the greatest Americans ever have come out of there. And the thing is, Mike Leach is Mississippi State. The focus with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and Mike Leach at Mississippi State, it was incredible. And the Egg Bowl ascended in these last 3 years to be among the most intense rivalries in college football, bar none.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what Mississippi State does going forward. I think we'll have to understand that there'll be a grieving process. And Sid Salter, the director of communication of Mississippi State, put out that there's been no firm plans for any type of memorial, public memorial, or anything like that. But that will come very, very soon, and it'll give it the opportunity for the players and the fans and the administration and college football to mourn the loss of Mike Leach. But I kind of go back to it, and this is a conversation for another day. But this is a business. This is a situation where you have to continue to move forward. And Mississippi State has a plan in place for the bowl game, but obviously recruiting's coming up. Early signing day is December the 21st, so there's obviously some things to be put into place, and that'll be a conversation for another day for Mississippi State. That's what the next step will be for its head coach.
Yeah, we just got about 4 minutes. I know you've got limited time this morning. Jimmy Hodge, jump in here with a quick question or two because we got to get Brad to another meeting.
Yeah, Brad, this situation brings about some more questions in regard to the early signing period because it's become the signing date in which basically 90% of the high school recruits make official their commitment to where they're going to play at least for their freshman year. And I'm just wondering if under any circumstances where you have Power 5 football programs that make coaching changes and it can drastically change a recruit's mind, that had been set on playing for a particular coach or just a coaching staff in general. And it really puts a punctuation point on just how hard it is for any program that changes their staff or has a change in leadership to be able to try to salvage a recruiting class they think they have in place. And do you think that this might spark maybe some momentum in going back to that February signing period, or what's your thought on that? Because I'm thinking about Mississippi State right now, and they've got so many things to deal with. The bowl game, getting the players ready physically and emotionally to play a bowl game, but yet also putting together your future with trying to figure out which of these high school commits you think are going to come play for you and who aren't. And it just makes it an even more difficult situation, it seems.
Yeah, and, unfortunately, a lot of these players actually committed to Mike Leach, and they committed to play for a Mike Leach-led program. So, it's a tough job on the sitting assistant coaches to not only grieve the loss of a confidant, a coach, a friend. You've got to go out and sell the program to student athletes who have committed to your program. And number one, you don't know who the head coach is going to be. You don't know if you're going to be there. It just stinks is what it does. And it's unfortunate for Mississippi State because you don't know kind of what to do. I heard a good friend who's in sports talk radio yesterday. He called me and said, Brad, Sunday night, there have been reports that Mike wouldn't make it through the evening. And if he did, he would never coach again. And there were a chance that, you just don't know that he was going to make it, frankly. And he said, I just don't know what to do. And I told this person, just be honest. And when you do your radio show, just be honest and say, look, we're in a situation where we don't know what to do. So we're going to lean on you. And we as collective college football fans are going to get through it together. We as Mississippi State fans, Ole Miss fans, we're going to get through it together. And that's what this person did. And I think you have to be honest with the student athletes and say, here's what we've got. We would love for you to be a Mississippi State Bulldog. We just don't know a lot right now, but you're committing to that M over S, and we'd love to have you. I guess that's the selling point. I kind of go back to Jimmy. It's a business. And unfortunately, Mike Leach is not going to be the coach, but there's going to be a coach, and there are going to be games next year, and there are going to be players on the team next year. So you just have to do your best to get past this first hurdle to get to December the 21st. There's an additional signing period coming in February. I would think you could combine a lot, and there will be a lot of answers that will come before February, and I think that's what Mississippi State's probably going to do.
Yeah. And Brad, listen, I know you've got to get going, and want to thank you so much for taking time when you're on with us, and let's do it again next week. Love having you on. Always learn a lot. Let people know how they can follow you and all the great work you do every single day.
Yeah, just follow us at the Believe in Ole Miss podcast, a part of the Believe Network, and of course, Inside the Rebels, an affiliate of 247 Sports. And that's where you get all the updated information about Ole Miss. And of course, we're part of the 247 Sports family, where you can get any type of college football item that you would like. That's at 247sports.com.
Yeah, and I wish everybody had your compassion and empathy, because you mainly cover Ole Miss, but look at the way you're talking in reverent tones, and I respect it so much about Mississippi State. At the end of the day, it's all about people. We're all trying to walk each other home. Have a great one, Brad. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Hopefully going to have in just a moment, Dave Cody is going to try to check in from out in Bellingham, Washington. Again, longtime sports anchor, 36 years on the desk in Austin, Texas. New Mike Leach, and we're waiting for him if he can get through. And I, just hearing the way Brad talked, and again, he mainly covers Ole Miss, but you see this over and over, Jimmy. People that cover these schools, rivalries are what they are. But God help me if I ever say I hate somebody or hate another school or anything like that, because that's not what it's all about. And Mike Leach, man, just the more you hear about him, and I heard he was at a Christmas party Saturday night for Mississippi State, and now he's gone. And you think about his family and Mississippi State people, and I know a ton of them, Mississippi State fans. And one thing, they just love that university. And not that they don't love their coach, but they love that university. But Mike Leach, he's different. And like I said, his legacy will be one that will live on a long, long time. And, Jimmy, you mentioned about signing date coming up this time next week. It's the December signing period is, I think, Wednesday, the 21st through Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it is like, Brad Logan said, it's a business. Zach Arnett right now is a temporary coach. And, Brad has talked for the last few years on our show about Zach Arnett. And, but, I saw last night when they had called all the Mississippi State coaches in off the road to get back to Starkville. And, that kind of told me that this may be, the end, and it's what happens. But it's going to be critical. And I don't know who they're looking at or whatever, but that's a very appealing job. Jimmy, Mississippi State University, it's an appealing job, great quality of life down there. So, they've got, I don't know of another school who's got more right now. They've lost their AD. Now they've lost their football coach. But I believe, they'll figure it out. They will figure it out. So, Jimmy, the takeaway, I think you said it when we were talking to Jordan Hill. I thought that was interesting. What Stetson Bennett, how he ended up getting remember, he went to Jones Community College in Mississippi. And to hear him say when he accepted the Brandon Burlsworth Award, a lot of people said, hey, don't go back to Georgia. Don't go back to Rockville. And he did. And then he was told he was 4th or 5th team. Son, you need to find something else to do. I'm telling you, is honorable and great an award to honor the legacy of Brandon Burlsworth. Also think something may be happening one day about Stetson Bennett, because if they win back-to-back national championships, and I don't want to hear anybody tell me there's a lot of talent on that team. Come on, Captain Obvious. Stetson Bennett, Jimmy, hopefully Dave can join us. What is the legacy of Stetson Bennett the fourth if they win back-to-back national championships in the almost 90-year history of Southeastern Conference football? Quickly, Lauren, quickly.
Well, in Georgia lore, it'll be right up there with anybody,
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but go back to the post-game news conference after they won the national championship, and just judging by Stetson's answers, he appeared to be really coy, but I got the impression that, man, this is the perfect time for him to go out, riding out in the knight in shining armor, and yet I think he shocked a lot of people with his decision to come back. And, you just never know how that's going to work out, but it's turned out almost perfectly, because, you can have a lot of great players, but if key players get injured, it can really hamper your chances. And Georgia has really gone through most of this season with key players relatively injury free. So it's just worked out really well for everybody involved. And hey, here they are, 2 games away from winning back-to-back. So, they're just in a really good position, and it would cap off one of the greatest stories of an individual player in Georgia football history.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, A.J. McCarron, 78-79 at Alabama. Stedman Shealy?
Yeah, now Stedman was the sole starter in 79. Now him
co-starter in 78.
Jeff Rutledge were co-starters, in 78.
Yeah.
Of course, back in the Wishbone days, they had 3 or 4 guys ready to play on a moment's notice.
Well, you got beat up.
Yeah, because in those days, the quarterbacks carried the ball a lot, and the defensive game plans could determine whether they wanted to take that dive play away and make the quarterback run it and inflict a lot of hits on those guys, so it was a different time.
All right, so now let's do this. We got a few minutes left. Dave is having an issue. He has an Android. Got to have an iPhone to play on Sidelines. So now here we are. A.J. McCarron, back-to-back, solo starter, 11 and 12. Stetson Bennett attempting to do it 21-22. In the other 90 years, I'm trying to think. He's getting into some rare air.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, technically, I'm thinking about did 64-65 Alabama win both years?
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
66, that was the missing ring,
66 was the missing ring, and then now 65, they Namath had gotten injured, and Steve Sloan played a lot, so you had 2 quarterbacks for the most part that year, but for a guy that a quarterback that pretty much went the whole way, that would be the 2, I guess, in the last 60 years, Stedman Bennett and A.J. McCarron.
Yeah, Stetson Bennett the fourth, A.J. McCarron. And they just, again, what they do in the NFL, if they even get there, doesn't matter. I think this is a big deal that's on the verge. of happening, and you can't let the moment be bigger than you are. Hey, about out of time. Want to say, go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't make change in the offering plate. Give to give. Don't give to get. Most often we're going to see the face of Christ in the least among us. And like Audrey says, you see somebody walking across a bridge that looks like they're on the streets, homeless, what have you. Somewhere out there in America and somewhere in the world, there's a family that's up at night worried sick about them. Do what you can to help people. Hey, we're here every Monday through Saturday. Sidelines. Got a great show in store for tomorrow. One of our guests will be Coach John Brady. We're going to be talking college basketball. Jimmy, you ready to talk some college basketball? I think you are. I think you love basketball more than you love field hockey. So I mean, you get into that stuff. But we're going to talk basketball tomorrow. Also, Kent Stevens is going to join us, the historian for the College Football Hall of Fame over in Atlanta. He was just texting me, what do we want to talk about? You know what we're going to talk about tomorrow? Tumultuous periods throughout the history of college football and how we persevered, got through it, and how we got the game better than ever, because that's what we're going to do, folks. Hey, remember, find excuses to win. Have a great day. Until tomorrow, God bless America. Merry Christmas. We're out of here.